Hello, everyone. Today with us, we have Erfan Firouzi, and he is a naturalist and also an award-winning storyteller. Take it away, Erfan.
So once again, hello to everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm Erfan Firouzi, as we mentioned, and I am a high school student right now, but I've been researching on animals and plants for the past 9 years, nearly a decade. And I have also been using the power of storytelling to bridge the gap between the scientific world and the activism and awareness world so we can, save the planet. Apart from that, I've been preserving specimens, over 300 specimens of animals and plants, and being a biodiversity advocate in many international and national events, TEDx, COP28, you name it. So yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. Glad to hear a little bit more about yourself. So, in terms of your, you said you did a TED Talk?
Yep.
Amazing. In terms of biodiversity loss, I know that is something you talk about. What's something that you would like to highlight from your talk?
One thing I would like to highlight from my TED talk is that the thing is, people think that I live in a city, it's far away from the natural world, and hence I have no connection with that wild world. But the factor is that even within our cities, there are pockets that exist with wildlife there. And despite us living miles away from city, despite, let's say, myself living in Dubai, living kilometers away from Antarctica, those animals there actually have an impact on my life and have an impact on different lives of people around us. And the thing is, something I would like to highlight is the fact that nature is all around us. If we give it a chance, it can recover. But at the same time, we as humans think that, well, we are dominating the world, but in reality, we are not.
That is so true. That is so true. Nature has an incredible ability to recover. I think we saw that during COVID when the earth just started recovering as humans went away for a few months. I know that in
Yeah.
India, the Himalayas could be seen from like, I think, a 25-mile distance. And that was the first it had happened in what? Many, many years, 50 years, I think. You are situated in Dubai, right? All right. Yeah. So I can understand why people would think you're from a big city and therefore don't have any connection to nature. But I'm glad that you're able to prove people wrong because I'm sure many people they live in big cities and they would also like to contribute to making a difference and being more sustainable. But they think that they live in a big city and therefore that would not be possible.
Yeah, they do very much. I mean, even in Dubai, the thing which is unfortunate, people think that it's a desert country. So there's no life, there's no wildlife here. But then, yeah, we get to prove them wrong.
That's great. Uh, so there is like, what kind of wildlife is there in Dubai?
Um, so I believe we have got a huge amount of variety of creatures, bats, insects, mammals, gazelles, foxes. And we also have got one of the most extraordinary nature recovering or nature conservation stories also here. So we have actually a huge amount of wildlife. For example, we have got hedgehogs also here. So and our beaches and our oceans are filled with extraordinary creatures, sea turtles, pufferfish, you name it. We have got mostly a huge amount of array of life. So yeah.
That's cool. So, do you usually like going to the water, to the beaches?
Well, not for swimming, because they can, again, it's an uncontrollable region, right? Especially the region of Jumeirah Beach. At some point, there were so many jellyfishes there. And at night, there's a beach near to my house called Mamza Beach. And I've spotted stingrays there, sea urchins there. So for swimming, not very safe. But then for going and exploring, getting your hands on with few, if the moon is high and the water is back around the month of March, you can get your hands on long spined sea urchins. If you know how to handle them right, it's going to be a good experience for you. If not, then you can get stung and it's going to be a painful experience. So yeah.
Ouch, ouch. Getting stung is definitely not ideal. Are those creatures native to the area or did it happen because of some like environmental problem?
Well, majority of the creatures in the UAE's waters are native. The long-spined sea urchins are native, and they feed on algae. So the thing is, I spoke about being stung. It's not actually basically stinging. It's basically the spines going in your, let's say, hand and breaking off because they're crystalline structure. So, and you cannot pull them out because they break further. But in the land itself, we have got many creatures that are actually invasive. We have got crows here, minor birds, and of course pigeons, surely stray cats. All these are of course not native to the locality here.
I see. Interesting. So, okay, that's really cool. I thought I thought personally that it would be around a 50-50 split because I know that Dubai recently hit a high of 50 degrees Celsius temperature, and I guess temperatures kind of surface around that area now. So I figured that it may have um induced a little more change in the area. But
It
speaking
has.
of,
We have
yes,
more rain here, so it's more green, we can say.
all right, that is good. In terms of where you actually live, I know that Dubai, at one point in time, it was very it wasn't as popular as it was now. How do you think that might have changed the area around you?
I mean, it has had good impacts and negative ones as well. The popularity of Dubai came with a lot of infrastructural changes that took the land from nature itself, right? The more buildings they built is in the desert regions, right? And the thing is, for example, in the deserts, animals are very well adapted in living in these conditions. But to be honest, the more we build here, the more people we bring here, people cannot be that well adapted. So a lot has changed. I mean, if you look at the time-lapse footages, Dubai has completely transformed. It has become to such a busy and bustling city of all these seven emirates that it's sometimes frustrating, to be honest. But with that infrastructure changes, right, comes the responsibility for us to take action. Like last year, December 2023, we had COP28, which took place in the UAE. And again, being in a country in the Middle East, usually most Middle Eastern countries are hubs for greenhouse gases, hubs for oil as well. But the UAE showed that we can find a balance between those both and we can cut down fossil fuels. I mean, especially in the capital, Abu Dhabi, we have got extraordinary buildings that have actually found ways to mimic nature. Um, we have also been shifting to most of our public transport is, by acquiring electricity. So we've got electric buses, taxis, and the metro itself. And we have got, I mean, at a weekly basis, the UAE has reached to the point of learning about its natural environment very well. That we have got different events organized by World Wildlife Fund or Environmental Agency Abu Dhabi, planting campaigns, workshops, and over time, I mean, it's all because of the leaders that live here. I mean, the thing is, the UAE is the Middle East itself. If you look at it, is where human beings settled at first. It's where agriculture began, trading began, and it played an influential role because, for example, at when I was born, 2004, we were losing the UAE's national animal, right? And so the leaders came together. Sheikh Zayed came together, and they formed a conservation program, and they brought back to the Arabian oryx from extinction to the highest population in the world. So they has had changes in the infrastructure, tourism, and business, but at the same time is doing a lot both locally and internationally as well.
That is that is amazing. I'm glad that there are countries that are able to rebound like that even after they have suffered. I know some more countries around the world should be able to do that, especially as we go forward into the future, because I know probably more countries will be impacted by climate change, and that's absolutely necessary. One thing that did catch my eye while you were speaking was you talked about like greener buildings, greener technology. Could you expand on that a little bit?
I mean, the thing is, when we look at it, I've always told this in most of my talks. The thing is, we are at some point of time, many years ago, maybe thousands of years ago,
Mhm.
we lived in balance with nature. We were hunter-gatherers, you know. Nature basically determined our survival. And it still does. People think that nature doesn't determine our survival, but it very much does. We saw from the coronavirus as well. But at the same time, now we determine nature's survival, right? So came a lot, we have came a long way since then. But if you look at it, we have to return to the way we were, right? So I mean, greener buildings include, let's say we have got the I don't recall the name, but we've got a building in Abu Dhabi in which it's kept cool not by an air conditioning system, but by these huge blinds outside, sort of star-like structures that open and closes naturally by the sun. So as the sun moves, the blind opens so it can have a shade inside the building. And as the sun, let's say sets or moves off, the blinds close again, showing the inside world, what the outside world looks like. Apart from that, green technologies are all around us. I mean, electric cars, electrical vehicles, even the way we can acquire normal technology as well. I mean, drones. In many parts of the world where we see forests, we are seeing drones going and planting those native trees, seeds, by going in untouched areas or inaccessible areas and dropping those seeds with a packet of fertilizer as well. Apart from that, drones are being used in I believe California, I guess, in dropping off mites. They are predatory mites that feed on the herbivorous mites that feed on plants, or indeed wasps, right? That actually lay their eggs on, let's say, moths and parasitize them so they won't destroy crops. So apart from that, technology also exists in forming, for example, coral reef sanctuaries. We are acquiring technologies to regenerate coral reefs and return them to the native habitats. So we have come a long way indeed, and I mean it's all around us. Technology will actually be a step in which we can ease our way back to back to what we call it sustainability. I mean, even your phones are a useful aspect. We have got an app out there called iNaturalist, in which you can go and take a picture of different creatures you see while you go on a walk, and it tells you the exact species. It's if it's endangered or critically endangered, and if it's not threatened or such, and it tells you its locality as well.
That's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to download that app immediately. It was called iNaturalist. Yes. Okay, cool. And that is such an interesting way to use technology. That's like, wow. That's like a proper modern based solution, and you're using it to solve modern day problems. That's really interesting. It's a good way to make use of technology. From my perspective, people these days, like they kind of see technology as a weapon, maybe one, because it takes a lot of resources to create. Two, I mean, some iPhones are not created ethically, but that's another discussion for another time. And three, they can be harmful to both ourselves and, I mean, the world around us as well, in terms of radiation and maybe with cars as well, in terms of, I mean, of course, fossil fuels, pollution. So it's really nice to be actually to see that there are places that use technology in a very sustainable way, in a very safe way. I especially like the drone idea. That was so cool. In terms of solutions, I know that with your solutions, this is like a very technology-based solution. But from what I know about you, you like to make your solutions more nature-based. And I know you have your special acronym, Rewild. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what Rewild stands for?
Of course. So I first spoke about the word rewild back in my TEDx speech some 2 years ago or so. And I believe in the quest to heal our planet, we must work with nature. Because if you look at it, nature is our only ally in fighting against climate change, right? If you look at it in history itself, I believe that the sudden change in climate or the impacts of global warming as we know it um, mainly was caused because we lost biodiversity. Now, some scientists say that biodiversity loss is a twin problem to climate change because when we have enough biodiversity to capture our carbon and our emissions and our actions, we are safe. But the thing is, as we so far dominate the world, we are, as a result, destroying biodiversity, which is cutting off those allies which can capture carbon and help us fight against climate change. So the vision of hope basically lies in the concept of revival. So the letter R, in this case, originally in my TEDx, it was regeneration, right? But it can be further broken down into reconnection or rejuvenation. Now, regeneration can be regenerating the lost biodiversity, regenerating places that we are already cutting down, regenerating places that can actually rebound back quickly, right? Followed by reconnecting with nature. I mean, the exciting here is that most youth all over the world are actually reconnecting with nature, and that's how they are developing ways to save it. For example, I used to see that in older images, people used to catch huge amounts of fish, large fish, but now if you look at the fish markets, they are not the true size they were before. So reconnecting with nature is one. And rejuvenation. Now, when we talk about rejuvenation, is rejuvenating the oceans at first, because oceans, people might not know it, but are also a key ally in helping capture carbon. I mean, they are the second lungs of Earth after the Amazon. And we still have a lot to explore there, you know. Possibly many medicines can come out from researching on the oceans, many species. And of course, even protecting the oceans protects places such as the UAE, which is next to the shore, or different places. Australia is one of them, where coral reefs and mangroves help capture the impact of waves, reducing the occurrence of tsunamis or hurricanes and such. The letter E, when we talk about it, stands for evolution and empowerment. We already spoke about evolution in our talk today, where we spoke about bringing in innovations using technology to evolve our lives. But also evolution can stand for preparing ourselves, evolving in a way that as we regenerate wild spaces, we are evolved enough to welcome them within our cities, within our lives, and such. And apart from that, one of the key things is empowerment. There are many people around the world, many youth around the world that are taking action, that are doing small steps to do things, even yourself with your podcast, spreading awareness. So empowering the youth is one of the biggest steps too.
May I
Vision
ask an
W.
elaboration question on E?
Yeah, sure.
I know you talked about evolution, but does that include biological evolution?
We can say, I mean, we already have had biological evolution within a few people as it has been studied. But as we say, the impacts of climate change is in a way that it's causing the sixth and the worst mass extinction that made possible lead to very few or no species surviving because the world is changing very fast, right? Hence, we don't have time for biological evolution until some genetic mutation or some variation takes place. But we can actually evolve. No one knows. It depends on the biological system. Many species are actually evolving ways to, you know, adapt to climate change. But I believe for us, living in luxurious environments compared to nature and wildlife, we cannot evolve that fast. I mean, there's this trend that has been coming out these days about plastic pollution, where plastic has been found in all the placentas tested. Plastic is in nearly every food we eat. So, I mean, how can we evolve to that, you know?
Yeah, that's it's dangerous. The chemicals, microplastics, it causes many human issues. But thank you. I was just curious if it involved biological curiosity.
So yeah, as we were saying, W stands for welcoming wildlife and wildlife conservation. I mean, it is one of the things I love the most because when we look at it, right, it intertwines with a testament to our connection with nature. I mean, Ruhi, you and your audience can just picture this. Picture a world where wildlife corridors crisscross urban landscapes, preserving the habitats of our countless species. These corridors, carefully planned and protected, echo the vital link between our ecosystems, health, and creatures that call them home. I mean, what we understand from W is it links to E as well, evolution, is we must evolve ways in which we have to transform our cities and urban structures to mimic the natural world, to mimic the local habitats. I mean, Singapore is already doing that in an extraordinary way. So they can bring and also welcome wildlife in our cities. And so they can, regenerate in our cities back to R again, and they can build up populations within our cities. So in a simple sense, we must make our cities into a wildlife sanctuary, where we work with nature and nature works with us, and we all live happily ever after.
That's the best happily ever after we can ask for.
Yeah. So I symbolizes innovate and inclusion. We already covered innovation, which is using, our harnessing technologies and, different aspects of human ingenuity to ensure everyone has a seat in this table of grand narrative of rewilding. But we also have got inclusion, right? And I mean, before we get to that, we can talk about innovation. Again, from innovation, we mentioned about green technologies, green urbanization, green architecture, but how? Where are they going to come from? The thing is that is also linked with nature itself. When we look at it in the UAE itself and in waters nearly throughout the world, there's a jellyfish species called the upside down jellyfish, right?
Mhm.
It does not have stings, so it cannot sting a person. And some of the stingers are basically nematocysts, which they don't have, but they have got extraordinary adaptation. Similar to coral reefs, in which they have got a symbiotic algae living in them. These jellyfishes also have got a symbiotic algae living in their tentacles and some even in their bow as well, in which that's why they call upside down jellyfishes, in which they lay upside down on the near to the shore in shallow waters, so they can gather sunlight and photosynthesize. So that's one way we can learn from nature on how we can acquire different creatures to innovate ways to work with nature and capture carbon. So that's one of the most exciting things, isn't it?
That's cute. That's cute. I'm gonna research more about upside down jellyfish after that.
And of course, L embodies what you are doing, learning. So the letter L embodies learning, which is again a key aspect of rewilding. Because as Dr. Jane Goodall says, if you don't understand, you won't care. If you won't care, you won't save. So we must understand the natural world. We must learn about it. And learning includes teaching farmers how to shift from chemicals and use natural pesticides, pest controls, such as ladybugs to reduce the aphid populations, or wasps that actually are parasitic and lay eggs on caterpillars so they won't be feeding on the crops. And learning also includes teaching something which we lack as of now in my school, in schools really all over the world, is the lack of being able to connect with nature, right? I'm speaking from my own opinion, my own perspective. These schools around the world are so academic based that not only they are very boring, right, but they're also keeping students from exploring their talent, exploring their passion, exploring their curiosity for the natural world. But if schools can actually, and universities, education institutions, um, involve people, students, children to go and explore the natural world, they can spread awareness. They can spread different aspects of rewilding the world. Then I believe we would have been in a much better place than we are now, right? Because I had kids that come to me and they're like, "Why are you doing this? We are not close to nature. We make our own food. We drive our own cars. Why?" You see, that question must be answered by schools and education institutions. They must show that despite the fact that we so dominate the world, we still very much depend on our planet's biodiversity. And the last word is discontinuation, which is the word D. So D breaks down into discontinuation and dedication to future generations. Now, when we talk about discontinuation, what comes to your mind? Can you tell me?
Discontinuation of current, I would say discontinuation of like current habits. So maybe our current way of life.
Yeah, that's very much it. So this continuation of different aspects, overfishing, using plastic, hunting. I mean, the thing which annoys me the most sometimes is I go and just do a small survey, or I go and do some research, or I just go and walk next to the beach or something, and I see these people who have the audacity to come and explore the waters, catch crabs, catch, whatever they find, catch these small fishes. I mean, come on, why are fish markets existing then if you're going to catch our own food and eat? And I believe like it's a blame to those particular markets as well. If the markets reduce the prices of, let's say, sustainably caught fish, sustainable products such as reusable bottles and all, then people will move away from that. And again, this continuation includes poaching, because poaching is also a huge impact on wildlife, including rhinos, pangolins, and they usually don't have a real good effect. I mean, people say, okay, rhinos' horns or the pangolin scales are used for medical purposes. But in reality, they're the same material that our fingernails and hair is made of, right? If they did have a medical purpose, why don't we store our hairs and fingernails and sell them for medicine, right? So this continuation of poaching, and as you said, this continuation of our habits. And at the end, after all those rewild, it comes to dedication for future generations. The thing is, most of us are living a life in which we think, okay, there is no tomorrow. The world is limitless. Let us live in the moment, right? And they don't care about what the future holds, right? Dedication to future generation means gathering up all these rewild letters and rewild solutions that I told you right now into one and implementing them so the future generations are able to see elephants. Future generations are able to experience better weather than we do. Future generations will be aware of what's going on around the world and how they can save the planet, include all these aspects. So that's what Rewild is personally to me. So yeah.
That is honestly from this, I can tell that Rewild is a very powerful acronym. And it's honestly so interesting. It's like 6 different parts coming together. Um, and honestly, all of them, they seem all equally important. Um, I think discontinuation kind of stood out to me because even in my area, it's like living living in the moment is like one of the easiest things we can do. Yet the moment is made out of the past, what it was, and the future, what it will be. So I can completely understand you when you say that we should focus what we did in the past so that we can improve the present and so that the future can get impacted as well, future generations, so that it can be easier for them. And especially, yeah, when you talked about poaching, I think I also mentioned that actually in my last episode as well, we talked about that. And that is so true, how taking one body part doesn't, I mean, it isn't necessarily beneficial, and that it has a lot of harm, one towards the animal, and many times it's a big waste, because what about the rest of the animal? I mean, we still have so much to discover about animals scientifically, that I think we physically are not in a place to do poaching anyways. So I'm glad that you actually talk about that too in the acronym. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, very concerning as well is that most organizations are saying, cut on the meat you eat, cut on the fish you eat. But the thing is, it must be step by step. Let me cut my meat consumption first, then I can move on to fish and other things. And the thing is that organizations that are actually CITES is the name of organization, which actually control the poachings and the illegal wildlife trade and trading of animals. Once they make a species that is going endangered illegal to poach, naturally the price of that creature increases. So if I go and hunt a pangolin that is endangered and it's illegal, I'm going to sell it for more profit than if it was open. So that'll motivate people, right? Unless another rule comes that no, medical purpose does not exist, and hence we should not hunt them. For example, in countries such as Iran, they actually hunt Indian crested porcupines, thinking that their flesh has medical purposes, which I don't think they do. But then, yeah, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Wait, how could, maybe I don't know enough about science, but how could it possibly have medical properties?
No idea. But as far as we know, that the spines of the porcupine does have antibiotic sort of solution on its tip. So in case it's it pokes itself or its partner, then it can be healed easily. But then again, I think we already have enough medicine to acquire us for health purposes, and they go and hunt a poor rhino for its horn, which is the same material a fingernail is made of. So it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even in individual countries, if you take a look at ancient medicine, there always is something that is able to solve a problem. Maybe not cancer, but like small problems like common cold, things like that. There are remedies for that. So yeah, so the need to for flesh is, yeah, not necessary. That makes sense. As a vegetarian myself, I know that for me, I mean, I've never had meat, so it's very easy for me to adjust my food habits. I do know I have friends that are non-vegetarian who are trying to become vegetarian. So one thing that I would say is that if anyone does want to become vegetarian, or they at least want to reduce their meat intake, what you said exactly, taking it step by step is very important. So maybe you can even start with just one day a week of being fully vegetarian, and then slowly increasing that. Things do take time, especially when it comes to healing, when it comes to rebuilding,
I
when it comes
think
to rewild.
the thing is, we do not have the time. I mean, the thing is, see, if we look at meat, meat as in chicken and beef or sheep, we have no choice. We have to cut them off. We do not have any choice. You can see 96% of the mass of mammals on our planet are us, and the livestock that we have domesticated. So only 4% is tigers and whales and giraffes, or you name it. 70% of all birds are domesticated, chickens. But if you look at fish, fish is basically, if caught sustainably, the best way to exchange for meat as of now, right? Because if we can have marine reserves, we can catch a few fish to feed our populations. Because also a huge amount of food is wasted. Not everything caught or everything made is going to be used. So you see, it's about a must. It's not a choice anymore. We have to cut the emissions of meat intake. Because I mean, look at the amount of forest cleared to make way for, stables for cows or farmland. Look at the amount of methane a single cow releases, and the amount of food a cow itself needs. It's a huge value, and it's a huge energy consumption by those particular animals, which comes again from us.
Okay, I hearing the extent of the problem from you, then I can see how it might not be how it might be a must now. That is definitely agreeable. Actually, I have studied a bit of climatology myself, and I do know about a bit of the science behind energy consumption and how that relates to meat and the meat industry. And there is a lot that goes into it, especially with transportation, because a lot of meat gets shipped internationally, and that would cause a lot of fuel from even trucks, from ships, and that's not something that the earth can easily recover from, especially since that's probably not going to, especially since even if international meat shipping does stop, most likely there will be other products that do get shipped internationally. As we know, humans can adapt. So, but I mean, the earth still does have a smooth recovery process, which I think like rewild, if you were to use rewild, then or if you were to at least consider rewild, then maybe the earth could. I guess what I'm trying to say is that considering your acronym, like maybe I'll phrase this in a question. Considering rewild, what do you think is really important when considering like Earth's recovery?
I believe the most important thing is understanding the natural world and willing to change. I can make as much as promises as I want, but will I move on to those promises, or will I just procrastinate and never get to them? I mean, we have to understand how things work, not in the molecular level, not in the scientific level, but a simple understanding, you know. For example, apart from carbon emissions and energy consumptions, why is meat not a good option? Because see, when we look at it as a food chain sort of perspective, we can see that when an animal, let's say a cheetah, consumes meat, a gazelle, a little of that energy is passed on from the gazelle to the cheetah. The rest, meaning the bones, the carbon dioxide inhaled by the gazelle itself, is all that energy lost from the plants it ate. So the highest amount of energy, right, we can acquire is from plants because they are solid, pure form of energy. You're not lost. But as a person, let's say, as a pass on the food chain, the sort of energy is reduced as we pass on. That's why when we see a sparrow, we don't give any attention to it. But if we see a hawk or if we see an eagle, we're gonna be like, oh my goodness, look at that eagle, because it's a top predator and only a few energy reaches up there, so it cannot sustain a huge population. So I believe understanding the natural world is the key step taking action.
In that case, how can we understand the natural world more? Immediately, the first thing that comes to my mind is teaching it in schools, teaching it to the younger generation. I think doing that, we would be able to have from a young age, maybe from the ages of 3, 4, 5, we would be able to have a really strong understanding of what the natural world is like, how animals thrive, how they survive, how we contribute to the food chain. Do you have any
Yeah,
other
I mean,
ideas?
one of the biggest ways in which we can understand the natural world is at first stopping the human beings' characteristic of silly reasoning. If you look at it, when we look at COVID-19, right? Thousands of different stories came out, you know, of how COVID originated. But in reality, when we look at it, the more we exploit the natural world, the more our population expands, the more we are pushing populations of animals into different corners, and the more we are putting at risk ourselves for let's say a disease jumping from those animals to us, right? So I believe the best way we can understand the natural world is to see how we are contributing to our own nature, right? How the plastic I'm using is going to end up in the oceans and come back to me again in my food, and how it can lead to cancers and things we don't yet even know, right? One more way to understand the natural world is simply doing a walk outside. I mean, if you go and take a walk at different times of the day, right, you will see different creatures. In the early morning, you can see beetles running around, you know. In the afternoon, you can see perhaps butterflies moving around. And at night, you can see slugs and different creatures. So that's one way you can understand the natural world. And understanding the natural world comes basically from looking at the planetary boundaries, right? Now, a scientist named Johann Rockström, he formed a structure called the planetary boundaries. Now, there are 9 planetary boundaries that keep our planet stable. They are the reason our planet is in its stability. And I believe 6 of those boundaries have already been crossed, which includes ocean acidification, climate change, chemical use, nitrogen and phosphorus fixation, I believe, and biodiversity loss. And one more was there. So we have already crossed a lot of boundaries. So understanding that graph itself gives a huge impact. And it's, you can see the youth understand it. The sustainability chapter is in many of the courses these days. But the youth do not have as much as impact as the adults do, as our parents do, right? So that awareness will be passed on to them, which is the key aspect, because they still have got that old sort of mindset, we can say.
The old mindset. I think I get what you mean by that. But yeah, I mean, I love to go out on walks, and sometimes when I do, I won't see beetles, but I will see squirrels. They'll just be playing. Sometimes they'll come in my backyard. They'll try and look for food. In the morning, the birds come. We have a bird feeder outside. So they'll come, they'll start eating. They'll get all of them will just eat and then they'll leave. And it's a really nice sight to see. It's nice to see which animals come out in the morning, afternoon, evening. And it's nice to see like at I guess because I'm a little scientific, I kind of like to see how the sun also impacts them. So like at what times of the day will they come out? Will there be more sun? Will there be less sun? But yeah, essentially even that itself is a good solution. In our previously in the video we talked about like technology-based solutions with the drones and stuff. But I think like nature-based solutions are also just as important. Do you know any good nature-based solutions that we can implement like right here, right now, or maybe as a long-term thing?
One of the biggest nature-based solution is one thing first: cut your consumption of meat. That's the key step. That's the biggest carbon footprint you can cut off, right? I mean, I've given up meat for 6 years now. No, more than that. Because first of all, it doesn't taste good, and it's not nice, ethically to harm animals for such reasons, and the impacts they have on our world. The second way of nature-based solutions is learning to work with nature. Now, if you're talking as an individual, you can have plants in your balcony at your homes that help not only purify your environment, but also if they are native plants, which is preferred, they can provide a home for different creatures, butterflies, insects, and again, bringing nature back is a huge impact. One of the biggest nature-based solutions is using your legs and cycling as much as you can rather than using cars, right? Because again, when we look at it, even electric cars at the end of the day, the electricity is produced by fossil fuels as of now. Only a very few is produced by solar or wind power or renewable sources. And as I mentioned, in the innovation sort of background, we can mimic nature in the best way as we can. If you look at it as a huge sort of perspective, to help our planet, nature-based solutions must mimic nature. It can be architecturally, let's say if you build a house where at least till a foot long of that base of that house is made from porous bricks or bricks with holes, they can provide homes for carpenter bees, bumblebees, and such. And nature-based solutions is the name is itself nature-based. So it's about looking at nature, getting innovations, and implementing it.
That's amazing. I can see that the solutions are very versatile. I bet that if one were to actually sit down, think of a list, they could start implementing these solutions every day. That's really inspiring, actually. And it's interesting to see how, I guess, even in these times, I mean, nature still has our back. So we should take advantage of that, help nature, it'll help us. I feel like that's a pretty good exchange.
It is very much.
Of course, of course. I do think we are running out of time, Erfan. Thank you so much for being on today's podcast episode. It was truly inspiring to talk to you. And I think I learned a lot about like technology-based solutions, nature-based solutions, about Rewild itself, biodiversity loss. And I hope that the audience has also learned something from this podcast as well.
I also learned a lot, honestly, from you. So keep going.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much again for joining. You know, Erfan, during the episode, I was just thinking that even as we were discussing, I was coming up with ideas in my mind as to how maybe the audience can also benefit from even the striking biodiversity loss, how potentially they could, at least if not use nature-based solutions, they could be aware of the different solutions that exist. And I think mainly people implement when there's specific days that are dedicated to implementing solutions. So how would you feel if one of the things that our audience could do is that they could document all of the nature days that are present in their local area, maybe on a calendar or in a notebook?
I mean, that sounds like a great idea because there's so many days that are happening. Let's say in March, there was World Recycling Day, World Forest Day, and your audience, all people who are listening to this, they can implement different actions on different days. We have got Humanity Appreciation Day, we've got World, Butterfly Day. So all those things can be a way in which we can learn about those creatures and also spread awareness as well.
Perchance, is there an event today?
Yes, there is the Earth Hour today at 8:30 and to 9:30 local time, where the whole world goes off.
Awesome. Cool. That's one very prominent
It's
example.
the World Bear Day.
Oh.
It's the World Bird Day as well. So yeah, there were two events today.
That's nice. That's sweet. All right, then. Documenting all of those important days would definitely give some motivation to the viewers, I believe, to take action, to remember this podcast and remember that there are things we can do. Maybe sometimes we just need the right day, time to take this action. Again, thank you very much for coming. And I'm glad that we were able to have a nice, lengthy discussion.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dear Future Earth is now streaming on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.